Daniel and Claire Weston seemed like the couple who had it all until one rainy night, when a desperate husband wrapped a cord around his wife's neck, only to discover, moments later, that she was still breathing. In the quiet suburbs of Ridgeview, Daniel and Claire Weston were the kind of couple everyone noticed. Their white two-story home sat neatly on the corner of Willow Lane, framed by flower beds that bloomed in perfect colors during spring, and a lawn trimmed so precisely it looked like it had been measured. The warm golden light spilling from their windows in the evenings made the place look like something out of a magazine. Neighbors often saw them together, smiling politely during block parties or walking hand in hand down the street. Daniel was known for his sharp suits and confident handshake, a real estate agent who always seemed to be closing another deal. Claire was softer, with an easy smile and a quiet warmth that drew people in. She taught art at the local school, filling her days with sketches, paints, and the laughter of children. From the outside, their life seemed untouchable. People whispered about how lucky they were to have found each other, how they made marriage look effortless. Friends imagined them spending quiet evenings in front of the fireplace, or taking weekend trips to the lake. In many ways, the Westons were the symbol of stability in a neighborhood where everyone was trying to keep up appearances. But inside their perfect home, things were far from idyllic. Behind the polished front door and spotless kitchen counters, Daniel carried a secret that had been growing heavier with each passing day. A year earlier, a series of bad property investments had left him deep in debt. At first, he believed he could fix it, that one big sale would turn things around. But the market slowed, and his debts only grew. He began taking risky loans to keep the façade intact, telling no one, not even Claire. Claire, meanwhile, sensed a shift in him. He had become more distracted, more easily irritated. She would catch him staring at nothing, his jaw clenched, his mind somewhere far away. But whenever she asked what was wrong, he brushed it off with a smile and a few comforting words. She believed him, or at least tried to, because the alternative that their marriage was cracking was too frightening to face. As weeks turned into months, Daniel's silence became its own kind of tension, a heavy presence in every room. The perfect image they projected to the world was holding, but only because no one knew the truth. And Daniel, desperate to keep it that way, was already beginning to think thoughts he never imagined he could entertain. Daniel's debts had become a living thing, creeping into every corner of his mind. The phone calls from creditors were relentless, their voices cold and unyielding. Letters stamped with urgent warnings piled up in a drawer he kept locked in his home office. He had tried ignoring them, tried drowning the noise with late nights at work, but the numbers kept growing. It wasn't just money anymore, it was the crushing realization that his life as he knew it was slipping through his fingers. The thought of telling Claire had crossed his mind more than once, but every time, he imagined the look of betrayal in her eyes. She had trusted him to provide stability, to be the foundation they built their life on. To admit failure would be to admit he had let her down in every way. He began to resent her without even realizing it, her calm and happiness becoming a reminder of the chaos swirling inside him. Then came the night he found himself studying the dusty folder in the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. Inside was the paperwork for Claire's life insurance policy, something they had taken out years ago, back when the idea of tragedy seemed distant and unreal. $500,000. The figure sat on the page like a quiet answer to every problem that had been eating him alive. He stared at it for a long time, his heart pounding, the idea first forming as a flicker in the dark before spreading like wildfire. He tried to push it away in the days that followed, telling himself it was madness, that he could never do something so irreversible. But the more he struggled to find another way out, the more the thought crept back in. At first, it was just an unwelcome shadow. Soon, it became a plan he found himself shaping without even meaning to. Daniel began noticing things he had never paid attention to before: what time Claire took her tea in the evening, how she locked the back door, the way she sometimes stayed up sketching in the living room long after he went to bed. Each detail slid neatly into the blueprint forming in his mind. He didn't think of it as murder. Not exactly. It was survival, an ugly necessity forced upon him by the world's cruelty. One rainy Thursday night, with the streets quiet and the smell of wet pavement heavy in the air, he made his decision. The time for imagining was over. The plan would be set in motion. The house was silent except for the steady patter of rain against the windows. Claire sat curled in the corner of the living room sofa, a blanket draped over her legs, a sketchpad resting on her knees. The soft glow of the lamp lit her face, casting long shadows on the walls. Steam curled from the mug of tea beside her, its faint herbal scent mingling with the faint smell of rain drifting in through a slightly open window. Daniel stood in the hallway just out of sight, his heart hammering so loudly he feared she might hear it. In his pocket, the length of cord felt heavier than it should, as though it carried the weight of the choice he was about to make. He had taken it from the garage earlier, pretending he was looking for tools. The texture of the cord was rough against his fingers, the fibers biting into his skin when he gripped it too tightly. Every second he hesitated, the air seemed to grow thicker, pressing down on him. He took a slow step into the room. Claire didn't turn. She was lost in the lines she was sketching, her pencil moving in smooth, absent strokes. The sound of the rain masked the faint creak of the floor beneath his foot. His breath came shallow and quick, the adrenaline drowning out every thought except the one: it had to be done. Moving behind her, he pulled the cord from his pocket, his hands trembling with a strange mixture of fear and anticipation. In a single motion, he looped it around her neck and yanked it tight. The sketchpad slipped from her lap, landing on the carpet with a dull thud. Claire's hands shot up to claw at the cord, her body twisting in panic. Her breaths came in frantic gasps, the sound muffled and desperate. Daniel held on, his jaw locked, his knuckles white. The fight in her arms weakened quickly. Her fingers loosened their grip on the cord. The only sound now was the rain outside, steady and indifferent. When her body went limp, Daniel loosened his hold and stepped back, breathing hard. Her head tilted slightly to one side, her eyes half open but lifeless. Kneeling beside her, he pressed his fingers to her wrist. No pulse. The silence felt absolute. She was gone, or so he believed. Daniel sat back on his heels, staring at Claire's still form on the carpet. The cord lay beside her like a discarded snake, its purpose complete. His own breathing was uneven, a mixture of exhaustion and disbelief. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, as though the walls themselves had witnessed what he'd done and were closing in around him. The rain outside had softened to a quiet drizzle, but inside, the silence was almost unbearable. He knew he had to move quickly. Every second she lay there was another second he risked being discovered. Rising to his feet, he scanned the room for anything that could link him to what had happened. His eyes darted to the sketch pad on the floor, the mug of tea on the table, the faint indentation of her body on the sofa cushion. He would need a story, something that explained everything without raising suspicion. The stairs caught his attention. If she were found at the bottom, broken and lifeless, it might be written off as a tragic fall. He pictured it: paramedics arriving too late, neighbors murmuring about slippery steps and unlucky timing. It could work, but to make it believable, he would have to move her now. He bent down and slid his arms under her. The weight of her body was startling, heavier than he remembered. The warmth in her skin a strange reminder that only minutes ago she had been alive. He began to drag her toward the stairs, his mind fixed on the plan. Then it happened, a sound so faint he almost thought he imagined it. A soft, uneven exhale brushed against his ear. He froze, every muscle in his body locking in place. Slowly, he leaned closer. There it was again, a shallow, ragged breath. Panic surged through him. She wasn't gone. She was still breathing. Her chest rose in small, struggling movements, her lips parting slightly as if she was trying to draw the air back into her lungs. For a moment, Daniel's thoughts splintered. This wasn't supposed to happen. The plan had been clean, final. Now there was a sliver of life, and with it, a dangerous possibility. If she woke, everything would unravel. She could tell them what he had done. She could destroy him. Yet as he stared at the faint flutter of her breath, an unexpected feeling crept in, an uneasy hesitation he hadn't prepared for. Daniel stayed crouched beside her, his mind a storm of conflicting thoughts. The cord lay only a few feet away, a grim reminder that he could still finish what he had started. His hands twitched, but he didn't move. The faint rise and fall of her chest pulled his gaze in, each breath fragile yet stubborn. It was as if her body refused to surrender, clawing its way back from the edge. Fear began to spread through him, not fear of her, but fear of the consequences. If she woke and remembered, there would be no hiding from the truth. Prison walls, a ruined name, the end of everything he had fought to keep, it all flashed before him in sharp detail. Yet beneath that fear was something else, something that twisted in his chest and unsettled him. Guilt. He had told himself that this was survival, that the world had forced his hand. But seeing her like this, broken yet fighting, shook the cold certainty that had carried him to this moment. The voice in his head urging him to finish it was losing ground to another voice, quieter but persistent, telling him to stop. His body moved before his mind had fully decided. He grabbed his phone from the coffee table, his fingers clumsy as he dialed emergency services. His voice cracked as he reported that his wife had collapsed, that she wasn't breathing right, that they needed to come quickly. The lie rolled easily off his tongue, polished by panic. Minutes later, the distant wail of sirens cut through the rain. Blue and red lights splashed across the walls as paramedics rushed in. Daniel stepped back, letting them work. They checked her pulse, fitted an oxygen mask over her face, and lifted her onto a stretcher. One of them mentioned that she still had a chance. At the hospital, machines kept her breathing steady. For days, Daniel sat by her bed, rehearsing explanations for when she woke. But memory is a stubborn thing, and Claire's began to return in fragments, hands around her neck, the smell of rain, the tightening cord. 2 weeks later, police officers came for him. The trial was swift, the evidence damning. The man once admired in Ridgeview now faced a lifetime behind bars. Claire survived, but the image of the perfect couple was gone forever. And in the quiet of his prison cell, Daniel had nothing left but the memory of the moment he realized she was still breathing.